Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now we have quite a captivating tech discussion this morning, and we're looking at the rising threat of AI-driven fraud, of course, in West Africa and Africa as a whole and all of that. And it's going to be quite a nice one here. I have with me here on the show this morning, Ibifuro Apiafi. It is great to have you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, so when we say AI-driven fraud, what exactly do we mean by AI-driven fraud?
Okay, so AI-driven fraud is basically fraud that is perpetrated leveraging AI tools, right? So in the past, we saw a lot of fraud that was pretty basic. So people trying to gain access to financial services apps using maybe a picture of somebody's picture or taking a video that they've pre-recorded and trying to take a screen grab from that. But now we're seeing people using AI tools to generate synthetic IDs that they're then using to try and onboard on digital banking apps. And we're also seeing on some digital banking apps, you'll find that the KYC requirement requires someone to smile. And so we're seeing people use AI-generated tools again to generate videos of people that are not presenting themselves but making them look like they're smiling to get through the KYC requirements at the point of onboarding.
All right, wonderful. Now, Smile ID, you did a report on all of this.
Yes, we did.
Now, what were the findings of this particular report?
So we found some interesting things. So first things first, AI-driven fraud is on the rise, right? Especially in the last 2 quarters of 2024, we saw it rise 7-fold. Now, it's alarming, but then there are measures that can be taken, right? We're seeing things happen across different markets. So in West Africa, for instance, it's mostly biometric authentication fraud because in West Africa, most of the businesses there leverage biometric authentication. In East Africa, we're seeing more document-related fraud because in East Africa, there's more document authentication as part of the onboarding process. So those are some differences we're seeing on the continent. Also, what we've noticed is that there's been a shift from registration fraud to authentication fraud, and I'll explain what that means. So you're 4 times more likely to encounter fraud at the point of authentication, and that's because at authentication, typically there's already value in whatever the person is trying to break into. So authentication will typically happen when a user...
No, go ahead.
Okay. Authentication will typically happen when a user is trying to maybe change their password or change their address on their app, or they're trying to do a transaction, just trying to confirm their identity. We're seeing a lot more fraud happen at that point in the journey than at the point of registration, because if you look at the economic climate globally, right, people are a lot more motivated now to perpetrate fraud because of the harsh conditions. We're also seeing that people are more willing to sell their identity, right, so that it can be leveraged by these fraud, I'll say, syndicates. Syndicates, as it were. So, like you said West Africa is more biometric, and East Africa is more documentary. Why? Why is it that there's that proliferation of the biometric fraud in West Africa? Why is it much? Why is it that much here? Okay, so in West Africa, you find that we have ID authority databases that are available and accessible. And so onboarding in West Africa is typically a user provides their ID number, and then they're required to take a selfie, and then the ID number is then used to query the ID authority database, and we pull the image from the ID authority database and then compare that to the selfie that has been provided. So that's why you're seeing more biometric authentication fraud. But in East Africa, what you're seeing is more document checks. So the user provides a selfie and a picture of their document, and then the security checks are done between the selfie and then the image that's on the document. Right, so that's why we're seeing that difference.
Now, you made mention of financial institutions, They're the ones that are more susceptible, I think, for it to such. Is there any way, what can they do from their own back end to ensure that maybe this is entirely wiped out, if not maybe reduced to the barest minimum? Is there anything they can do?
So wiping it out is difficult.
It is.
Because fraud is forever evolving, right?
It is.
So there are things they can do, though. So first things first is, as counterintuitive as it may sound, it's leveraging more biometric authentication means, right? And partnering with organizations that have the expertise, like Smile ID, right?
Okay.
So we wake up every day and all we think about is how to protect our partners, our clients from these fraudulent attempts, right? That's what we do. And so we encourage people to work with organizations like us.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. And then we would like to see more collaboration because these fraud syndicates, they operate in packs and they're very happy to collaborate like
amongst
across
themselves.
Yeah, so locally across jurisdictions, they work pretty well together. So it would be good to see more of that within like financial services, within even like technology players like ourselves, and also with the regulators.
When you say partnerships with who? Within the technology circuit, or are you talking about partnerships with government or private sector? What kind of partnerships do you mean?
It's a mix, right?
Okay.
Because the fraudsters don't work in isolation, so I don't think that the players who are trying to keep them out should work in isolation. So technology partners should work together. Financial services institutions need to do some more data sharing because if someone perpetrates fraud on platform A, it's very likely you'll find that they'll commit fraud on platform B. Right, so it's important that there's some data sharing across organizations.
Is that not happening now?
Not real time, right? So it happens typically when there's been some maybe law enforcement involvement, and then you find that by the time they're investigating,
so it's basically reactionary.
Yeah, so we need to get to a point where it's more proactive.
As it were.
And there's a lot more data sharing and synthesis across
Wonderful.
the ecosystem.
How about on the private level now? As a person, is there any way I can safeguard myself or something, or safeguard my information against such AI?
So the first thing is be careful where you provide your identity information, right?
Okay.
You see that it's not your NIN, so as a Nigerian, for instance, your NIN BVN information is very important. You shouldn't just provide it on any platform. So you need to be careful about where you provide that personal information, right? If you see a scheme that looks like it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
So don't just share your information and think that you're going to quickly make some quick money, right, on any scheme, because it could just be them trying to farm your data, which they will then use to perpetrate fraud at a later date, right? So it's very important to just be mindful, be very watchful, and be careful about.
And then you made mention of regulatory agencies. That's talking about, of course, government agencies and all of that. Where do they come into this? Because like we mentioned, we can be reactionary and all of that. In what ways can we ensure that government is on their feet? Because like you said, they can enforce, can't they enforce this partnership, as it were? Because, like you mentioned, for the fact that you call for partnership amongst the technology players, that means that it is not there as it should be.
Yeah.
Is there something that government can enforce that as a prerequisite, maybe for playing in the technology space, that you have to share information or partner? Because like you said, those guys don't work in isolation. You could even have cases of people that are in the aspect going back to, commit this fraud. So what can be done? I mean, from the government part, how can they make sure that, maybe some sort of regulatory framework, a law or something to ensure that you have to do this as a technology player?
Yeah, so I mean, regulators are doing a lot already. They've already, I believe last year, there was a lot of regulation that came out around ensuring that people are providing specific information at certain stages of the onboarding process. They've also made some requirements for biometric authentication to be part of the process. So we're just saying we need to see more of that. We expect the regulators to create the standards that the industry should follow. They're doing a lot of that. We're working quite closely with them as well to ensure that we're creating standards that will help limit the amount of fraud that we're seeing in the ecosystem. How do you work with them?
In what ways do you work with them?
I mean, so information sharing, right? So for instance, with this report that we've worked on, we spend time with them, talking them through what we're seeing and what we think they should be doing, right? And also, if we see certain trends and fraud happening, like last year when we saw like the spike in AI generated fraud, we did, send that information across to them so they're aware of what's happening in the ecosystem. So that's really what we do.
How often do you do these reports?
So currently we do it annually.
Annually?
Yes, annually.
Yeah, is it possible to have it more frequently? Because like you said, they evolve, just almost like everybody. And the evolution can be as trends are coming up and all of that. I mean, is a year, maybe not too long, because before that time, come on, new methods go on, the new formats go on, they go on, I don't know if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I get what you mean. So I mean, we do the annual report, but we also have our newsletter where we share like new products that we're releasing that will help partners protect themselves. And if there are any specific trends that we've seen in the course of the year, we actually send that out in our newsletters as well. So the report sort of just gives an overview of what we've seen in the whole year. But there are little bits of information that you can get from our website, or from, if you subscribe to our newsletter as well, you get notification of any changes in the course of the year as well.
In the course of the year as it happens. But now, as a person, now this is more financial institution based. Yeah, I know I'd mentioned as a person, if they take my information now and all of that, are the financial institutions more affected than the than the end consumer?
It's a
who takes the brunt of this? Who bears it more?
Yeah, so it's a mix, right?
Okay.
So for individuals, if they take your information, if they're able to take over your account, for instance, they will take all the money in your account, right? Now, it's now down to you being able to prove that you weren't the one that did that transaction.
So who bears it? Will the financial institution reimburse me if I can prove that it wasn't me?
It depends on, yes. So the financial institution in that instance will bear the cost.
They will take they will bear the loss.
Yeah. So it's So
I've not. Is that practical? Because I have. Now you're saying it.
Yeah.
I know more people. In fact, my dad was telling me that it's not. It's not, because yes, it happens. The money has gone. I'm trying to see if someone that the financial institution took, they tell you that it happened, or it was your fault, or one thing. Yes.
Yeah. That's so. Unfortunately, the burden is on the individual to prove that they didn't conduct that transaction.
How do you prove that? Because this is me. I'm telling you that of everyone that I know, there's nobody that I know that. Maybe except, I don't know, maybe one or very few cases. It's isolated of those that even get their money back, but very few.
I mean, so there are channels for reporting these things as well to the regulators, and they will help, engage with the financial services organizations on your behalf, right?
Okay.
So if you feel like you're not getting sort of traction, you can use those channels as well. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. All right, this has been quite expository, and well, for all of you out there, like she mentioned now, it's possible that the financial institution can bear the brunt of the loss. It doesn't have to be on me as it has been, because that's the one that affects quite a number of people.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, and thank you for this enlightening discussion.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, hope you're able to pick up something there. Don't go anywhere. We will be back at the top of the hour.